Hi and welcome to part 2 of the Orca in alkyd oils, and on this video it's going to be a lot of going over and layering, so making those whites and the blues much more opaque by, as I said, going over it again. I'm not using any thinners other than just a little bit of odorless paint thinners just here and there, just to let the paint flow that little bit more easily from the brush. That's all I'm using, so keeping it really nice and simple. Don't have to worry about any mediums. And the thing is, when you paint in water, you know, lots of this surface reflection, it is really a time-consuming process. So as I said, this painting took me around about 5.5 hours, and to be honest with you, I got the effect I wanted, but if I wanted to be super critical, I could have easily spent another 5.5 hours on top, just continuing refinement, blending more edges. And as I've said in lots of videos, you know, it's up to you when you're doing your subject, how refined you want to make it go. Now, I don't mind you know, copying the videos that I'm doing for your own practice, but what you should really be doing to learn is to take the ideas and do your own work. Even if you wanted to do another killer whale painting, or say it's a zebra, or you wanted to do anything at all, take the techniques and create your own work, because at the end of it you get more of a feeling of accomplishment rather than using it and just copying from the video. But of course, if you want to do it for practice purposes, but use it then as a practice. Use it as a stepping stone to go on and do whatever you want to accomplish yourself. So I'm just going to continue. As you can see, it's quite a slow process. I need to concentrate a lot on where I'm putting the lines now. Getting the shapes pretty close to the reference, not exactly perfect, but obviously with water, lots of lines need to be horizontal, so I'm keeping that in mind. So I'm going to continue this process, just putting another layer on this water. Now the thing that's going to make the water look very vivid and contrasty is the reflections of black in it. Now it's not necessarily this orca that's reflected in the ones behind it, it's other orcas, or it's also, you know, the surroundings, but the thin black lines are going to make a big difference. So I'm still using quite a large brush, still got it at a chiseled edge, and you can go over a lot of the white paint if you use a gentle touch and use a little bit of a thinner paint as well. Now it's not going to be a perfectly crisp line, but it's going to be good enough because I know I'm going to come back in yet again when this is dry and do more refinement on top. But when you're doing things like this, you know, you can also let this layer dry and it's more easy to go on top. It's all according to whether you want it to blend out a little bit or not. So what I'm going to do now is actually block in the ochre. There's still only acrylic under there. So I can use this opportunity now to get the outer shape correct, clean up the edges, and actually bring this layer of the painting up to the same level then as the background, so I know that I've got a lot of oil on there then. So I don't want any of the acrylic painting, the underpainting left. I want to make sure that this turns out to be an oil painting and the acrylic is just being used as that map. So it's basically just black oil paint. I have put just a little bit of blue in there. Now on this top edge, eventually it's going to be a bit lighter, so it's not going to have the cutout effect that you can see now, because obviously light is reflecting down on that as well. So that section will be a bit lighter, but I'm going to worry about that just yet. Good thing about the black, it's very, very opaque, so it's going over the water, no problem at all, give me a nice edge, and I'm not going to have to go and do many layers at all because we've got that acrylic under there as well, so you can see why I used that here. So just going to clean up around the edge and work on the ochre a little bit. And so I've filled all that in then with a large brush. Now I'm going to work on the white, do the same with that as well. And I've added just a tiny amount of the red in there, very, very small amount, just to tinge the colour. You can see I'm just cleaning up the shape a bit and just basically overlaying that acrylic. And now just going back to a slightly smaller round brush, chiseled edge again, just using that dark mix, so it's basically the blue with a small amount of black in there. I don't want it too black. The blackest part is going to be the black of the ochre. and the black on the water is just a shade or two below it. And I've just moved that camera over a bit just so you can see this whole section nice and clearly. But I'm going to continue the same process. So I'm about halfway through the painting now. So still lots and lots of refinement to do. You can see we've got to start somewhere. So I'm getting in the general shape, position of the black. Then I can start to refine, and I can let it dry and come back in with some more white to tidy up the edges, and use even smaller brushes then for the smaller lines. Continuing the process now on this front section, so you can see I'm using quite thick paint. It's nice and opaque, that white. Really going to punch up these colours and the contrast now. So very limited number of colours being used. It's basically all about just getting the positions of the highlight and the darks, and then getting that reflection of the ochre in the water to be just a little bit more muted really. So the darks are a bit lighter, as I said before, than the dark on the top, and the lights are a little bit darker. I suppose some people would actually rather do a painting like this where there's not many colour changes. You haven't got to think too much, and perhaps it's a bit more of a relaxing one to do, because you are basically just filling in, especially at this stage. If the paint's not coming from the brush easily, a tiny bit of paint thinners will allow that to flow off. Too much and it's going to start to go semi-opaque, transparent, and start running down the canvas. When you observe the reference photo, you notice that there's some of this salmon colour actually being reflected in the water, and it's coming from the area around the mouth, the lower jaw of the orca, but it's not this one, it's another one that's in there as well. But it adds a bit of interest, it puts a bit of colour in otherwise black, white and blue painting, so it's quite important. And I made it just with some of the red, the yellow and white. So while I've got that on the brush, just put it in all the required places. Now this whole next section is really just going back over the white and the dark areas with the oil paint. So it's basically just colouring in. So I'm going to speed it up. I'm not going to go too fast. So if you want to actually see it progress a bit slower, you can. But I'm not going to do much voiceover because there's nothing really to explain on it. And I'm just going to let it run in that sped up version for you. Now I'm going to start to refine the major element of the water, so that lots of the blacks that we can see down in there, and also I'll start putting in some middle tones as well, so where you can see the dark blue that is reflected down into the water. I'm going to start to put in a middle dark as well, so that's just adding refinement. So you can see I start with the major blocks of colours, then I go on to refine those by putting in mid-tones and then refining that again. So I'm basically looking at that reference and looking for differences all the time. And this is more that mid-tone going in, so that's going to be the undulation then that's slight on the water. So that's going to make it look a little bit more realistic again, just with that small refinement then of those mid-tones. You can see how I'm cutting into the white to get crisper edges, usually horizontal strokes. So it's the same as I've been doing all the way through it. But as you get to this stage, I can start to see smaller elements that need adjustment, which I wouldn't have really seen so easily at the beginning, especially on a white canvas. I use very thick paint on these white highlights, straight out the tube, because I want them to be as light as possible, because that's going to make the darks look even darker then, because I've got a real full range of contrast on there, a real range of very black to very white. And these little reflective lights on the water, that makes a big difference as well. We then know how bright a day it is, and I'm just touching very gently onto the canvas. It's time finally now to start working on the head, and what I'd really need to do is get this pink much better, much more accurate. Everything looks a bit dirty and muddy at the moment. I want to clean this edge up, make it a bit darker. That'll make the lights look lighter again. So just steady hand, using my marl stick to rest my hand on. I can just blend slightly. If you wipe the paint from your brush on some kitchen tissue, don't scrub it, but just in the direction, in a pull direction, wipe it off. Then you can use that brush end to blend out. But what I'll do, I'll start to get some of this pink in as well. And then I've got everything wet and it blends much more easily. This pinky colour is just some of the red, the yellow, white, and when you want to subdue it, if you want to subdue it a bit, that's when I put just the smallest amount of blue in there as well. So quite a large brush again, blocking in a large area, so I don't want to be using tiny brushes. Then I can blend that edge nice and easy with oil paints. That's where you start to struggle with acrylics unless you do it very fast. Then it goes just a bit darker at this top, so that's that same mix but with less white in. Simple as that. Now while I'm here, I might as well refine the rest of the mouth area, get some of these lighter tones in. That's going to give it much more shape. The inner part of the mouth is black with the red and a small amount of white. Can't really make it out that easily on the video. It is a very subtle colour change. This line, just steady hand, and I'm using the same pinky colour that I used on the lower jaw. The teeth in shadow are very barely visible, so just a suggestion of those. And then just a small suggestion as well of the teeth. There's not much detailing to do at all on them. Just that bit of a suggestion. So not a lot to do with the face really at all. Just getting things in, you know, pretty much an accurate position. Again, the lights and the darks, right? That's all it is. The bottom water here is very easy to do. There's not a lot of detailing. It's quite a small painting. So I'm just using some of that, you know, that middle tone watercolor. And then I just come in with a few lights and darks. The eye is going to fill in, you know, the fact we know it's just a ripple of water there. So I don't need to go put in much detail in it at all. And just the same on the front, just that suggestion of where the highlights being picked up. And now I'm going to come back in and really work on this water on the right hand side. Trying to get these dark areas a lot more refined. Put the sharp edges in where I need them. Not too worried about the shape being perfect. Just want to kind of get the positions about right, just so it still reads as water with reflections. So it's got that mirrored or that glassy look to it, that wet look. So I'm just checking the tone then against the reference. Make sure it's not too light and not too dark, because tones are what I'm interested in more than the colours. Okay, I'm going to start working on this section of the back where the water is rippling up onto the back of the orca. So I'm getting in a dark area first, because sometimes colours sink in a bit, and that's why we varnish when it's dry. But I want to get the black in first so that I can assess how light and dark I need to get these little bits of water splashes. So I'll get some more dark in there first, then I can come in with some of that mid-tone blue, and then I'll come in with highlights. So I'm not worried about getting this exactly right. It doesn't need to be just after the suggestion, so the viewer's eye knows this water actually flowing up onto the back. and then tiny little brush, just some of these little highlights. That's just going to give the effect. I don't really need to do a lot more than that with it. And now exactly the same as I did on the right hand side, I'm going to do on the left hand side. So that's re-establish the whites, put the darks in, and basically just refine this section of the water in just the same fashion. And as I'm coming to the final stages now, you can see I'm putting in more refinement, so more of that mid-tone water. Those small ripples, the undulations. So just more refinement. And as I said, I could have kept going and going on this, but I feel that after these last little stages that it's enough to say everything I wanted to say about it. I've got that reflective look. I could have come back in and gone more and more refined, but that'll only benefit people that's very, very close to the painting. Okay, I take the reference away now because I want to look at the painting as a whole in these final stages and just refine where I think it's needed. More highlights, more darks, just generally looking over the whole thing as one. And looking at the painting, I've decided that I want to punch up the whites even more, refine the faux water even more. So I'm going to go back over quite a bit of that just to sharpen up edges, alter shapes, get a bit more whiteness and opacity in there. And that's going to finish off a little bit more to the level I wanted. So I hope you've enjoyed this painting. It's something very different. Only a few colours used. As I said at the beginning, I don't think I've ever done a painting that used so few colours. But we've got that look of glassy water, reflected water. The orca looks wet as well. So hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you all again real soon for the next painting.